Great creators have so much intrinsic motivation to create that they can't help but grow and find success. Many great creators were just making stuff with no intentions of finding success, making money, or even getting good. The key difference that pushed them above everyone else is that their intrinsic motivation was so strong that they persisted even when they were bad, even when no one cared, and even when they weren't making any money. Luckily, we all have intrinsic motivation to an extent. The real challenge is cultivating enough of it to propel yourself to the next level. In this video, I'm going to be talking about what intrinsic motivation is and how you can grow it so that you can reach new heights with your creative work. Real quick, if you don't know, what is intrinsic motivation? Intrinsic motivation is basically the drive to do things just to do them for the joy of it, like the joy of creating or the joy of exercising, rather than some sort of external reward like fame or success or money. So let's use running as an example. If you're purely extrinsically motivated, you might sign up for a marathon and then be motivated by the idea of telling your friends you're training for a marathon and that you're going to get a shiny medal at the end, things like that. If someone's purely intrinsically motivated to run, they might not even sign up for a marathon because they were going to do it for free. They go out running every day just because they like how it feels and what they get out of it, and doing it is its own reward. Most of us have both at varying levels. Us creatives are often on some level intrinsically motivated to make stuff just because we like doing it. Kids are really a good example of this. You were a kid once. If you give a kid some crayons and some paper, they're gonna go crazy drawing whatever nonsense they draw. 99% of the time it really sucks, but they had fun while they're doing it. All they cared about was putting marks on the page, making something they thought was cool. They're in the moment, and the reward for doing the thing was the process of doing it. We start to lose this as adults as we develop a fear of judgment, higher standards for ourselves, starting to seek more external validation, and it really kills our intrinsic motivation. Why is intrinsic motivation important? People who are intrinsically motivated are generally happier with their creative work and also have a self-sustaining form of motivation. Being intrinsically motivated basically creates a loop that naturally makes someone practice, get good, and get satisfied in the process. Compare this to someone who needs praise or followers or likes to practice and put out work. That person isn't going to go as far as the one that already has all the motivation they need all the time. They're also more likely to push through creative challenges like skill plateaus or negative feedback, which helps them grow even faster. And this is really important in the early stages of a creative journey when external validation is usually pretty low. And also they just have more fun, which is really great, and again sustains that positive loop that makes someone practice and get good at their craft. And being intrinsically motivated over time really adds up. If you compare two creatives, one who's very intrinsically motivated and one that relies heavily on extrinsic motivation, you can see where the difference is over time. An intrinsic motivation person, they're pushing through creative challenges, they're having fun along the way, they keep going even when they're having a tough time, they always practice their craft for fun. And then the more extrinsically motivated person will need praise, the right condition, and some sort of external thing that's not within their control to be motivated to put in work. And over time, this difference will only build. So it's really important to cultivate that intrinsic motivation for doing what it is you want to do. So that's what intrinsic motivation is, but how do we grow it? How do we cultivate it so we have more of it all the time? This is what's worked for me. It's really important in life and in all things to never try and play losing games. To start, don't try and play a losing game when it comes to creating. And that means finding and focusing on a craft that's just inherently satisfying to you, not the one that's most impressive to others, not the one you think will make you the most rich. None of that. It's just whatever you find the most satisfying. It's a losing game if you try to force yourself too hard to like something, like trying to rap just because you want to be like Eminem or something. If there was a global competition of beginner creatives and you had to bet on the one that was going to be the greatest and the most successful, you would bet on the ones that have the most fun and love their craft the most. They're the ones that are choosing to play a winning game. If you find you're only doing something for extrinsic reasons, it might be time to pick up something else that you actually like. And if you don't know what craft to choose, what creative path to go on, here are some ways you can figure it out. So you can ask yourself, what have you already created for free? Maybe you're not doing it now, but what have you tried in the past that was really satisfying and you want to do more of? What haven't you tried yet that you think you'd really like? You can also look to what you dreamed about doing when you were a kid. Often that can reveal something about our inner desire. Or you can just start trying things. A lot of stuff is really accessible. Just try things and see what you like. Well, my winning game, I think, is in the realm of art and visual design. I like these things, I'm decent at them, I did it as a kid growing up, and I kind of stopped doing it for a while and then I picked it up again, but I never regretted any of the time I spent working on designs or drawing. I'm pretty decent at it too, and I find that I'm learning it decently quickly too, so it creates this nice satisfying loop where I can do it and then grow, and then I get satisfaction from growing, so I do it more. I think the most important thing though is I liked doing it before I was ever any semblance of good. And keep in mind, you can grow to like things over time. You don't always have to like things immediately, but if you find you really hate something after spending a lot of time with it, maybe drop it. The next thing you can do is to define some intrinsic goals to give your work a higher purpose. Think about, why are you doing what you're doing? What is the ultimate goal? And an intrinsic goal is just something that doesn't depend on external factors for you to achieve it. So you can ask yourself, what do you want to achieve purely related to your craft and your personal satisfaction and joy and personal growth? And the reason you want to do this is that those who have a very well-defined creative intrinsic goal have a purpose with every single creative act that they do. Some examples are maybe you want to create a short horror film that's, by your standards, super creepy. Maybe in a year you want to look back on your drawings and see that you've improved a lot and there are things in your old work that you can fix. And maybe you just want to finish an album of like 6 songs that you can share with people and then get their feedback. For me, one of my intrinsic goals related to art and design is just being able to design really cool characters and environments that fit into some stories that I want to create. I think just having the skill would unlock a lot of interesting personal opportunities for me to try and make certain projects happen, like maybe a comic book or some animated film, something like that. So while I'm doing my day-to-day practice of drawing faces and poses and looking at character designs, it's all aligning with this broader goal, so it all feels purposeful. So if you're able to align your work with some intrinsic goals, your day-to-day work will feel a lot more satisfying and a lot more purposeful, which will help you do it more. Another thing that a lot of people skip is just acknowledging your creative growth so far. I think a lot of creatives are happiest when we see some sort of growth over time. Maybe it's metrics, but mostly if it's related to the skills that we care about and we're trying to develop. If we look back and we see that the effort and the work we put in is paying off, then we're gonna feel really great about how we spent that time. But often we don't take the time to acknowledge it. We kind of just laser focus on the very next thing and we don't look back. We kind of downplay our past work. And if that sounds like you, then it's time for you to look back and acknowledge and reflect on how much you've grown as a creative. A simple way to do this is to just track your progress, save your work, look back on it from time to time, and you might notice things you can fix. And that's a good sign that you've grown since you made that thing. So I'm gonna share like some really old sketchbook stuff from when I first started trying to draw faces. So that's kind of what it looks like. So even within these pages, you see some improvement. Oh my God, I'm fucking up the mic here. Right, but I think they're okay. But obviously, I think I could improve a lot since I've done a lot since then. Oh my God, right? So that's me looking back. Even comparing that to this kind of more recent, but also old sketchbook, but that I worked on right after, you'll see the faces look a lot better. Some of them are I didn't spend as much time on, but so like this kind of. Oh God. Right, so I can see the improvement there, even within one sketchbook, but also across 2 different sketchbooks. You should do something similar, see how much you've grown, see what you fixed. If you feel like, if you kind of grown when you see your past work, then that's a good sign. Experiencing creative growth and improvement is really satisfying, but it only really works if you actually acknowledge that you've grown from your past self. And when growth becomes its own reward, it adds on to that satisfying loop of having fun doing something, growing because you do it a lot, and then it makes you want to do it even more. The next thing is more of a trap, and that's depending too heavily on extrinsic motivation, external factors to drive your work. Ironically, those that care the least about things like followers and money ultimately get it because they're the ones pushing themselves further and further beyond those that are just extrinsically motivated. Their brain already has everything it needs to fuel their creative pursuits. If you find something really fun, and you do it all the time, and then you get paid for it and you get recognition for it, that's really great. The problem comes when you have to rely on that external validation, those extrinsic motivators to get yourself to put in the work, to practice, to grind through and push through challenges, which is why doing something inherently satisfying and having intrinsic goals are really valuable. Try to get the best of both worlds, but focus on developing that intrinsic motivation. The next thing is to take a moment and find the beauty in whatever it is you choose to do. This is more philosophical, but one of the most gratifying and interesting things about creating stuff is that it's a very simple and beautiful act. I think it's pretty crazy that someone can just draw lines and put down colors or write letters in a certain order, and it can inspire people, it can make people think, and make people have emotional responses. Take a really close look at your chosen craft and try and develop that appreciation for whatever it is you do, because I think whatever you do is really cool. Look at how awesome some of your work is, look at how awesome the work of everyone else is, and think about how much it's affected you as a creative and how creative acts affect the world every day. There's inherent beauty in just making stuff, and by creating, you're also engaging in this act of bringing ideas to life, which I think is really cool. Having high intrinsic motivation is really crucial, but it's also kind of pointless if you fall for this very common and terrible trap that a lot of creatives fall for. And I talk about it in this video, so check it out. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.